Alright, so for today's video, we are going to be taking a look at the Knipex 9516 165 cable shears. Now, I've had these for quite a while. I believe I made a comparison video between these and a pair of Klein compact cable shears in the past, and I just realized that I never actually made a full review of this version of the tool. Now, I did make one where I reviewed the spring-loaded version of the tool, but I figured might as well drop a review of this version of the tool. So these are the insulated handle version of the tool. They do also make them with a comfort grip and a dip grip handle if you're not looking for the VDE handles. But you know, for me, with most of the Knipex tools that I buy, if I can buy them with the insulated handles, I generally am going to go that route instead of the dipped handles or the comfort grip handles. I just feel that the VDE handles are a lot more comfortable in my hands, but that is just my personal preference. So here is your model number here on the handle, and then you have the capability or the capacity that this tool can cut through for both copper and aluminum. These are not rated to cut through any steel wire, so you don't try and do that with these tools, otherwise you're going to absolutely wreck the cutting knives on them. And then down here on this handle, you have all of the certifications that this tool went through to prove that it can withstand up to 1,000 volts. And like I've said previously, I believe they test insulated tools up to 10,000 volts and they rate them for 1,000 volts. And then these being Knipex, of course, they are going to be made in Germany. So you're going to have that there on the handle. And you also have, with these insulated tools, you also have a date code on the bottom. So these were made back in 2018. So they're quite a bit old, but they don't get much use here, so the insulation on the handles is fairly good. That's something you see a lot on insulated tools, is when the tool is the year the tool was produced, just so you can judge how old the tool is, and if it's a tool that you are using day in, day out, or a tool that you use quite frequently, you can kind of judge how good the insulation has held up or how good the insulation is, judging by that date code. And then on the inside of the handle, you're going to have your made in Germany, and then you're going to have some more certifications for this tool to prove that, like I said, that it's rated for 1,000 volts. And then typical Knipex fashion, you got the yellow and the red handles on them. And then you have the Knipex name embossed in the handles, which is nice. And then coming up to the business end of the tool, this guy is chrome plated. Now they do also offer one that is a black oxide finish, but this is the chrome finish of the tool. So if you're working in a wet or somewhat of a corrosive environment, the chrome finish is going to hold up a little bit better than just that standard black oxide finish. Now you also have a slot right here in the center of the pivot point, and pretty much what that allows you to do is you can either tighten or loosen up the tool. So if you get the tool and it is super tight, you can take either a 5/16 or a 1/4 inch slotted screwdriver, and you can adjust the tightness on the tool. Now these are already pretty much loose, just the way I like a pair of pliers, so that's not something that I have to adjust. And then flipping over to the back, again, you're going to have that do not cut steel with these. And then, like on most of the Knipex tools, you have that barcode on the back. Not 100% sure. I haven't really been able to figure it out what that barcode is for, but I'm sure somebody somewhere out there knows what that barcode is. So if you do, feel free to drop that in the comment section below. But that is pretty much it for the detail. You also have the Knipex name, which I believe is laser etched onto the surface of the tool. So that's pretty much it for the detail. Now we'll kind of get into some of the functionality of the tool. So we're going to start off with my favorite wire, some 18 gauge thermostat wire. These shears just are able to plow through that 18 gauge wire without an issue. So we'll go ahead and move that stuff off to the side and let's just bring in some 12 gauge wire, and able to chop through that 12 gauge wire without any issue. So we'll throw that off to the side and bring in our 10 gauge wire, and again, you're able to cut through that 10 gauge wire without an issue. And if you so were inclined to, you could use these as a pair of wire strippers. If you didn't have a pair of wire strippers on you and you just needed to strip a conductor back. So that is with the 10 gauge wire. Now we're going to step it up to some 8 gauge wire. It's going to get a little bit more trickier and a little bit harder to cut through some of these conductors, with these being only 6.5 inches in size. When you get to those larger conductors or multiple conductors, you're going to kind of lose a little bit of that leverage with the smaller size handles. on here, so you're going to struggle a little bit more when cutting through some thicker conductors. But the 8 gauge, able to power through that without an issue. Let me see if I can't strip some of that wire off, or some of that insulation off the wire, and indeed I am. So that is some 8 gauge stranded wire. We'll push him off to the side and bring in some 6 gauge stranded wire and see how well they are able to perform. Definitely going to have to use quite a little bit more leverage when cutting through it, but these guys have no issue cutting through. Let's see if I can't strip these with it, and I indeed am able to strip the 6 gauge stranded wire, and we'll go ahead and cut that. Now I'll bring in a little piece of Romex, 12 gauge Romex. It has 2 conductors and a ground in it, and we'll go ahead and see if we can't chop through this, and we are indeed able to chop through that. You definitely, when you start to cut through multiple conductors, you can definitely kind of feel it in your hands. So it's definitely not something you would probably use a larger pair of these if you're cutting through multiple conductors, or, you know, cutting through a lot larger strands of wire. Now this is going to be one of those wires. Right here is some MC. So there's 3 conductors here on the inside. This is probably not the tool to use for the job. You can see I'm kind of struggling with it to cut. But you could definitely cut through it, but I definitely don't recommend if you're working with a lot of MC day in, day out. Probably not going to want to use these guys to cut this MC on a regular basis, only because it's going to put a lot of fatigue on your hands, and you don't typically get a lot of leverage with these, so I definitely don't recommend it. If you're, like I said, you're working with a lot of MC, I definitely don't recommend cutting a lot of MC with these guys. If you're going to be working with a lot of MC, you're probably going to want to get a little bit larger of a cable shear or some cable cutters out there. Knipex does have a few different variations out there if you want to stay with the Knipex brand. We have looked at them here previously on the channel. So with that being said, that's pretty much it for these guys. Like I said, I'm pretty sure I did a comparison video with these guys versus a pair of the Klein cable cutters, and never actually made a review of these themselves, or at least the chrome version of them themselves. I know I believe I made a version of the black oxide ones, and I know I made a version of the spring-loaded ones, but figured I'd make a video on these guys. So there are different options out there if you don't want the chrome plating. I know some guys out there, they don't like the chrome plating because it's pretty obvious that before they chrome plate the tool, they have to sharpen the cutting knives, and that chrome plating can somewhat dull the cutting knives on the tool, which can make it a little bit harder to cut through some material or some conductors or wires or whatever, versus just a non-chrome plated tool. So there are options out there if you don't want the chrome plated version of this. You can, like I said, the black oxide finish, you can get that if that's more in your wheelhouse. But with that being said, that's all I have for this video. So there will be a informational link in the description below to take you right on over to the Knipex website if you want to learn some more information about these cable cutters, specifically this certain pair of cable cutters. And there will also be some links in the description below if you would like to purchase these for yourself. But with that being said, that's all I have for this video. Thanks for watching.